Saw 10 sequel ideas. I haven't necessarily talked about this with anybody, but other than just kind of sharing ideas, but never really coming up with anything that could work one way or the other. With that said, I feel like this movie needs to focus on a very personalized trap in the same way that Saw 10 did. But because Tobin Bell is 81, and the fact that you have to bring him back and it has to be set either right after this movie or sometime in the 6 months between Saw 2 and Saw 3, I say put him in one room with one other person and let it play out that way. Bring it back to very bare basics, with it kind of playing out as the reverse or some kind of homage to the first film. And the only way I can think about that is you either have him talk to a priest or a therapist about his sins or stuff he's trying to get off his chest or things he's trying to work out in his final days. So he's essentially almost on his deathbed. You have him in the same physical state as he was in the flashbacks before Saw 3, in Saw 6, where he's on his wheelchair and he's barely able to get around, or in the flashbacks that we saw in Saw 3, where he's walking around and placing all the stuff for Amanda to find, or for Jeff to find, in relation to Lynn, that Amanda was not privy to because she had to be taken, like she couldn't understand the relationship between Jeff and Lynn, all of that stuff. With that being said, he's talking to a therapist, he's talking to a priest or something, trying to get everything off his chest. There's an episode of Dexter that I really like, that I would kind of take inspiration from a little bit with this. He goes to see a therapist that he knows is subtly telling people to kill themselves, commit, to unalive themselves. I don't want to, I'm going to get hit by YouTube's algorithm, sure. So he goes there and he poses as someone. He goes to a couple of sessions to kind of get this guy's perspective, and it makes him understand a little bit more about himself. And by the end of it, he's like, by the way, I'm a serial killer and blah, blah, blah. And oh, it feels good and everything, but I'm going to take you out. I think that I would take that as a bit of inspiration for this, where the priest is either really bad or the therapist is really bad, and John knows that, but John is having thoughts of himself in that way too, where it's catching up to him in some way, shape, or form, that like, maybe I am putting guns to people's heads and telling them to pull the trigger or something. Like, he's having a crisis of faith, so he's looking to express his anger or his frustration with his legacy and everything with this character through the whole film. And the concept of it is only one of us is going to leave this room, going, like I said, back to the bathroom, where you have to kill me or I have to kill you or whatever, right? Or whatever the thing is. I don't know how to word it. I'm not the writer here, and I don't even know what I would put in there, but I think the twist is the therapist a therapist priest or something ends up choosing their life or whatever, and that triggers something that ultimately like kills them or something, and the clues were all there and the conversation and yada yada yada. In the interim, I think that one of the things we're also focusing on, hopefully primarily, is Amanda, who is now taken up ownership of the traps, and she's putting it out there, hey, like, this person's in a trap, this person's in a trap, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things I would really like to see from this is, during that 6 months between Saw 2 and Saw 3, you see her put people in a trap. Maybe you start off with something like this, and then Amanda, as she's preparing for the next one and the next one, so there's like 2 or 3, 4 in this whole movie, with the big one going on with John talking to this guy, you see Amanda follow these people or see how the people who survived their traps start living their life. And at first, they're like her, it's like, oh, he helped me and everything. There's so much joy in the world. They see things differently. They change their life. But one of the things she realizes is these people go back right away to like who they were. They fall back into their same habits. And it also makes her think about her life and how she's also falling back into her same habits, how she gave up one drug for another, and that it's like, well, these people don't change. And she's fighting with the concept about whether or not she's changed and why she's changed and all this other stuff. So her story is this culmination of like, I've seen these people, I've tried to help these people in the way that John taught me how to help people, the same way he helped me. They got out of it. They chose life. They understand the value of life, but then they go right back to who they are. That's why she starts rigging traps. And I feel like that's the last trap of the movie, where you see her like do something that's going to rig the trap in someone's favor where they're going to die. That would be interesting to me. That would kind of fill the trap quota where, yes, you have things going on. You have brutality. That's obviously what a lot of fans want to see. But it's more tied to her character and the arc that she goes through in between, the first through the third film, and kind of helps to bridge that gap a little bit more. Super interesting, in my opinion. Another thing I would like to see is Hoffman, him meeting Cecilia, or Cecilia coming back for some kind of revenge and everything. And as I already talked about a little bit with my review of this movie, it would be nice to start connecting things. I think it doesn't have to be the main focus of the movie. Maybe, like I'm saying, the C plot of all of this, or even something that plays out at the beginning and end. It doesn't necessarily touch the entire story, but I think what you would do is you play it off. One of the things that we saw with Cecilia is she likes to manipulate and use people and basically get what she wants by telling people what they want to hear or doing things that they think they want or something in between. So I think you just have her do that with Hoffman. I know a lot of people would hate this, that, you're making Hoffman the kind of a henchman to Cecilia, and that kind of takes away from his character a lot. But you can play him up in other sequels and stuff to kind of make him still more assertive. But the point is like, she convinces him, she blackmails him, she does something to put John and Amanda in his crosshairs, where he thinks that he can get away from John and still do this or something. Like, she convinces him this. And one of the things I would really like to see is, because she's so rich, because she's so connected to everything going on, you start connecting like, well, how did Hoffman understand that Amanda was there the night that Cecil killed Gideon? Like, how did he ever figure that out? They never said that. He just knew it, and John apparently didn't, and all this other stuff. Just have Cecilia come in and be like, I want you to do this for me. Here's information that you need to know and how I want to play this going forward. So she's also trying to mastermind her way of getting back at John, and somewhat works, somewhat doesn't. But then you also, because you've introduced Cecilia back and you've tied her with Hoffman, you do open up the door where you can go back to the Saw 3D era and start making movies that way, and bringing in, hopefully, Hoffman into the proceedings, or more of a present day storyline where you have Hoffman, Cecilia, and hopefully other big characters that we've seen throughout the last couple of films. Like, you can bring back Zeke. Probably not. I mean, we don't know. You can bring back Dr. Gordon. Again, probably not, but we don't know. And then you have, you can bring back William. You can bring back Eleanor and all these other characters. And then you kind of have this standoff. What does Cecilia want to do? Is Saw 12 just Cecilia putting all of the remaining people in traps, right? That would be kind of cool. Like, kill off Dr. Gordon at the very end of it, at the very beginning. I mean, like, just like literally make him the cold opening kill. Carrie Ellis doesn't want to come back, but maybe he'll come back in order to get away from the franchise forever and have people stop asking him. I can see that. And then you have all these other characters that have been built up through this kind of mini multi-universal connected storyline that was, kind of haphazardly retconned together into being like, the end game of Saw 12 is everything in the modern era, and all the characters who have tried to continue John's legacy or somehow continued it or anything Cecilia's taking them out one by one in Saw traps in order to continue to spit on John for everything that he did to her. And then you can turn the tables around in one way or the other. And I don't know how you do that. If you're going to kill off Carolus, then I don't know, maybe pay him a bunch of money and you can have Lee Winnell come back and finally give Adam fans what they've been wanting this whole time. But that seems like Saw 3D level nonsense. So it's just, I don't know. These are really just general ideas. I have never really thought about this in one way, shape, or form. I have them. They're written down, but they're not in any real order, or they're not in any real dialogue heavy or structure or anything else like that. Not even a beginning, middle, and end. Just a lot of things I would like to see from a particular sequel from Saw 10. If it's not going to be that, if you're not going to have Cecilia, if you're not going to have John or anything, I think that one of the things you should do is forget about Saw 10, forget about Cecilia, forget about everything that happened in Mexico, and just do another character study. And if you're going to do that, then make it about Amanda. John has had so much screen time. The character is going to be on his deathbed in any legitimate continuation. Plus, Tobin Bell's 81 years old. Give the guy a break. Let him sit down. Let him lay down again like he was in 2006 and emote with Amanda in that way. But give it to Amanda. One of the things I would like to see if they ever explore anything in her character is, I remember back in either the commentary or some interviews or something where she would talk about like, well, we never really explored this. It was never really in the script, but the idea was, what was Amanda like? How did Amanda get to this point in her life? Obviously, Eric Matthews, he ended up getting in her way. He ended up framing her. She went to jail. She got addicted to heroin and she like drugs, and then she ended up hurting herself, and John came in, taught her something else, taught her to believe in something else, and took her on as his protege. But for her, it's like, well, this didn't just start with Eric Matthews. There's a lot of anger in this woman, and she doesn't necessarily know where to put it. And as I already talked about, there's stuff I'd love to see if you're going to focus on her, is her putting people through traps and then seeing how they don't appreciate their lives going forward. Her idea was Amanda's father was abusive, or she had a very bad relationship with her father. And we never explored that. But this is what Shawnee Smith kind of put out there. It's like, what if she puts her father through a trap? You know, John always says it can never be personal, but it's always personal. And he's probably a bad person anyway, who's not appreciating his life one way or the other. So you put him through a trap in the same way of Jeff's trap or something, where he has to go from one thing to another. He helps people, like he legitimately like pulls people out of the rubbish. Like, not just him survives. It's not like a Jeff situation. Like maybe one or two people die, but like the vast majority of them live because they work together, and he's turned over a new leaf or something. And that kind of puts her in this situation. It was like, well, maybe he's changed. Maybe he's a different person. I can contact him or anything else like that. But at the end of the day, like, he's still like, after all of that, he's still pissed off. He's like still mean. He's still aggravated on like just general in life stuff. He doesn't like her, blah, blah, blah. And that pushes her into being like, well, no, screw that. Like after everything that guy put me through, after all this other stuff, like people don't appreciate their lives. They don't appreciate what we're trying to do. And she starts rigging traps that way. I don't know. I think that would be interesting. It's something that I would like to see. Make it really personal for her character and her story, and give us something that we didn't already get in the previous sequels that were out. One of the things that I love about Saw 3 is that it's really the biggest FU movie that I can think of, especially for a trilogy capper, where they kill off John and Amanda and pretty much everyone who could have potentially continued the series going forward, with very little to go off of from that movie onward. Also, one of the reasons I absolutely love Saw 4, that movie picks up in a really interesting way. At the same time, doing everything that they did with Saw 3 and taking out John and Amanda at the same time, I think really robbed the franchise and the fans of an interesting perspective going forward. I really liked Amanda's character in the first two movies. I really liked her in the third movie. I think she was still probably one of my favorite characters. I know that Tobin Bell is everyone's favorite character, but I really like Amanda, and I don't think she was ever really given her due. So I would really like to see her be the star of a movie and something that we never really got to get before. So those are my ideas. At the same time, I know that somebody said earlier, like, oh, just put Hoffman and John together and show their relationship. It's like, yeah, I would love to see that too. But we got a lot of that in 4 and 5 and 6 and those type of movies. So I think we've seen a lot of that relationship. Certainly we've seen more of Amanda and John, but I don't necessarily think it's worth exploring all that much. Plus, if you focus on Amanda, you have a better opportunity to focus on Logan, because I feel like Amanda would have known Logan and interacted with him more than someone like Hoffman. I feel like Hoffman's really a lone wolf in all of this, and he was interacting primarily with John. At least that's kind of what it feels like at the very end, where Dr. Gordon takes him out and puts him in the bathroom, where he's like, what the, like he didn't realize that there was anybody left to take him out. Even if he knew about Gordon, he didn't think that Gordon was like interactive or something, or some kind of a threat. You know what I mean there? So yeah, like those are some ideas I have for this particular sequel. Again, in no order, no ideas of where it goes from there, but stuff that I really appreciate and would really like to see going forward in this franchise. Actually, another thing I would like to see, because I feel like it would probably be best. We've talked a little bit here about the box office success of these movies and why it's still going to make sense for them to make Saw 11 as a movie itself. But I personally think it would be more interesting if instead of a movie, they forego that and they make a streaming show or an HBO show or Showtime or something where they can do a little bit more blood and guts, a little bit more risque type of stuff. But they just make a TV show that fills in the gaps of everything that I talked about, and hopefully bring in other characters, like, bring in Costas Mandylor, bring in Matt Passmore, bring in, all these other, just bring in characters from all different eras of the Saw franchise and tell a winding story that takes place primarily in between 2 and 3. And then you can jump in between, go to post Jigsaw, go to post Saw 3, go to post Saw 3D, the final chapter, and see what happened to Hoffman and all this other stuff. And instead of telling multiple stories, because quite frankly, I don't know how much longer we're going to have Tobin Bell, and you want him to be a primary focus and get all these stories out, get all those stories out, wrap up everything, and hopefully leave it off on a way that has people excited more about, more Hoffman or more Logan or more William, more any of these characters, and then do movie franchise sequels for that. Kind of in the same way that Chucky is. I want to talk about Chucky and that success and how I feel like more horror franchise should be trying to riff off of that in future discussions, but it's fascinating to me, and I don't quite understand it. Saw 11 needs to take place between 2 and 3, and to explain Amanda going crazy, and did Hoffman influence her to pull the 180, and if John knows what's going on between those two. Again, like I said, that's exactly what I would really like to see. And if I think Cecilia is going to be a very big fan favorite, so bringing her back in some way, shape, or form, or having her be the catalyst into Hoffman going into this direction, and maybe he starts to play into her craziness or something, and having her do that 180. Again, you can start connecting a lot of this stuff and make the experience of watching, if you watch it in order, 1, 10, 2, 11, 3, that 5 films start really making sense, and then picking then up after 3D at the ending of 11 or ending of 12 or whatever, and having Cecilia free Hoffman, now everybody's left on the board who's still alive, is probably the best way to do this going forward, and something that I would really like to see. Tony Down Under says, welcome back. I hope Saw 11 and 12 continue to develop these characters. I agree. And one of the things I haven't discussed, but I do want to discuss at a later time, is I want there to be more Saw sequels. And if they're not going to do a TV show, then I say, maybe this is just me, but I would really say that they should film the next two back to back, just to have as much Tobin Bell as possible. And, Prophet Be Damned or something, just say, hey, we're doing this. It's a big story. Like, if it's going to be set 6 months between Saw 1 or Saw 2 and Saw 3, that whole 6 months, just make one gigantic story. And say, hey, this is the next two, 11 and 12 are the next two. We're going to connect everything standalone, working its way into interconnecting with things that came before and hopefully setting up things that come after. But swan song to Tobin Bell and putting all of that together, I think that would be fantastic. I think that would be, I would applaud them for doing something like that or a TV show. It says, LD says, great ideas. I'd be happy with any one of those sequels. I think any of these would be awesome. Let's see. VI, the whole Logan thing was so stupid. I still can't believe it. I still can't believe it's 6 years later. It still angers me. Also, the nephew dodgy bike thing and the baby smothering child shit. Blah blah blah. The flat screens. Yeah, okay. We're just gonna. I understand. Not a lot of people like Jigsaw. I get it. I see where you're coming from with Billy lighting up eyes. I don't place of Spiral. Yeah, it could have been better. But something new and exciting to me. Yeah, Spiral was new. Spiral was exciting to some degree. My point was it was a lot of. It wasn't necessarily. It was a difference without a distinction. It felt like just any other Saw film, at least to me. Like, if it wasn't about cops, I think it would have been great. Like, the fact that it was about cops, we never got away. Like I was saying earlier, we never got away from cops in the Saw franchise. It's crazy. Jigsaw had plot holes, which made it not that fun to watch. Besides the really cool score in the movie, just like Spiral had a great soundtrack and score. Yeah, I mean. The Saw franchise always has a really good soundtrack. Also, shout out to Charlie Clouser, who just broke the world record for most consecutive scores in a movie franchise. That's really awesome. I think 11 should be John plus everyone's story. Further flesh out John's relationship with his disciples and one disciple to another. Everyone together for one film could be very pleasing. Again, I think that's true, but I think the one thing that would really help this is, instead of it being that type of story, like that type of interconnecting my relationship with this person, and that person and everything, it can't just be one movie. I think it would be really awesome if they're like, hey, we're filming 11 and 12 back to back, and it's a two-parter of a story, and we're gonna release it year after, one after another, and blah blah blah, and it all takes place within the 6 months between Saw 2 and Saw 3. I think that would be really exciting, and I think that would be enough time to explore a little bit more of the relationships between John and his disciples during those two stories, and really kind of tie it all together and hopefully end the franchise, or at least put it off on a good boat where people would be okay with seeing it continue with others, not necessarily Tobin Bell, because they're going to have to cross that ship at some point if they really want to keep making them. But again, if you make a good swan song that helps bridge that gap, creates the relationship between those people, and ties up as much loose ends as possible, I think fans would be pretty, excited about everything coming after that. Plus, I've always been a fan of the fact that maybe comic books, novels, whatever you want to do. The concept, the character, and everything could be kept alive in various mediums. It doesn't always have to be movies. The Saw franchise is notorious about like not doing as much as other ones. And I already talked about, like Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, and all these other people, like they ran those characters and concepts and franchises into the ground because they made so much media surrounding them. And while that is good and bad, I think that I really think that it would have been fun to have that with Saw, because the story is really interconnected, and it would have been fun to see like, hey, you know, like more stuff like the video game. Is it canon and is it not canon? Do you really care? I don't care. I play that. I consider it canon. I'd have to go back and look at it, but I don't really see anything or know anything right now that's been introduced in any of the movies that would go directly against that. So why can't they be canon? I like it. If anything, we need to end with Saw 12 and just continue with Spiral 2 because it ends in a cliffhanger at the ending. Yeah, like I would like to see a Spiral 2. I keep saying, like, I don't like Spiral, but I would like to see a Spiral 2. I like those characters, and I feel like we can continue in a very interesting way. Just get away from the cop angle. I know that's going to be really hard with something like Spiral, but I don't know. It's kind of a cool idea. I don't know. Anyway, guys, I'm going to peace out now because it is 2 a.m. for me, and I have to get up and do stuff tomorrow. It has been a pleasure talking to you guys, which however little came in. I do appreciate everyone, concurrent viewers, and everyone watching now. Again, I'm going to leave this stream up for a bit, but my intention is to private it eventually and then take the main discussions here, section them up, and put them on videos on the channel. So hopefully I get that done sometime here in the next coming days, and we can, do the review section, the box office discussion, and the sequels idea discussion in 3 individual videos. And hopefully the people who missed the stream will be able to fully, experience everything that we got to talk about here. I intend to make this a regular thing and have discussions, a wide range of discussions from not only the Saw franchise, but everything. I still have plenty of things I want to discuss in the Saw franchise. I just wanted to do a bit of an overview, very basic overview of everything Saw 10, because guys, I'm really excited for Saw 10 being out. Obviously sit here for the last hour or so and talk about it. So again, guys, super pleasure. I really appreciate having everyone here, and I hope everyone has a really good night. I will see all of y'all out later, and it's been real.